there were some gyms that, after the Floyd 19 tweet went out, who said, that's enough, we're out. They de-affiliated. What have you done, if anything, to reach out to them to try to bring them back into the fold?
So glad you asked that, Tommy. We thought about it. So we did this affiliate town hall last week, and I was meeting with a couple colleagues, and we said, what do you guys think about inviting all the people who are no longer affiliates? Is that weird? Is that does that feel bad to the people who are affiliates? And I was like, hell, I want them back. And at a minimum, I want to be friends with them, and they'll come back when they're ready. And, a number of them are out of business or didn't see enough value. But they also, in most cases, I think, are people who had their life and their career transformed by CrossFit, and most of their friends and maybe their spouse are from the CrossFit community, and their kids are probably going in now. So let's open it up to them. So that was the first direct outreach that I did as a group. Is I sent an email to anyone who is a former affiliate, and I don't know what the time frame was. We went back where we had an email address still, and said, please join us for this town hall. And we value what you've done for CrossFit in the past, and we hope that you'll decide to come back at some point in the future if and when it's right for you. Yep. Right? So no pressure, maybe a little pressure, but no pressure. And you know what happened? I got one email back. I got a bunch of emails that were awesome, that you could tell they were tear stained, if emails could be tear stained. A couple people who had closed their boxes were like, oh my God, I've been waiting to have somebody reach out to me, and this feels so good. And it literally, you feel it emotionally. But I had one person who sent a note, said, based on receiving this note, I'm back in already, before going to the town hall.
Nice.
Wow.
And then someone sent me a note after the town hall and said, now I'm back in. Right? They want to talk for 5 minutes because they want to be able to talk through with their members why they're coming back. So I've done, since the beginning, I've been meeting with people one-on-one who have left, who are interested in coming back, and but more at their outreach or someone else saying you should. This was the first kind of group session. And again, we're not trying to please everybody, but I believe that a lot of people who have left will come back and should come back. I think it will be in their self-interest. One easy way for folks who listen to you guys who aren't current members of the community, I think there's an easy way to think about this. If you're non-emotional, there's kind of an emotional thing where we all want to be part of CrossFit, right? Other than, can I call my gym CrossFit? Because some of the boxes that have come back aren't even called CrossFit anymore, right? If your pure financial calculus is, hey, it's $3,000 a year, is that worth it? Well, if you have, if you're charging $150 a month, and you have 2 extra members as a result of being part of it, it's worth it, right? So, yeah. But you should be getting dozens more members as a result of being part of CrossFit. That would be the financial calculus. I think the emotional calculus, and the other part is do I want to be part of this community? Do I want to have a voice in deciding how it evolves? Because I think we all want a bigger stage and a bigger impact and a bigger forum than what we have now. We all want to do more good in the world. And I don't even care if you're running a business that's millions of dollars, which some of the people are who have de-affiliated and have multiple gyms and so on. You can have even more impact if you come into this ecosystem and help us build the thing really big. This is going to be a rising tide. We have a couple million members of affiliates around the world. 3 million would be the highest end estimate. It's probably more like 2. We had 11 million unique people watch the games. We'll have 500,000 people do the Open. Those give you some sense of the size that we are now. Does anyone not believe we could be 10x this size in 10 years? Yeah. Does anyone not believe we shouldn't be? Raise your hand if you don't think I should be friggin' fired if we're not 10x the size we are now in 10 years, right? That's what CrossFit wants to be. So what I urge everybody to do, if you're a great entrepreneur and you're on the outside right now, help us make it better. I'm human. I don't have a lot of the answers here. They're going to come from this great movement. And you can be way more part of it. And so I want you to be. That's my plea, you know what I mean? Yeah. But there's also, I think, economic self-interest. But really, at our I like motivating people from the highest level that you get motivated as a human. and it's this self-actualization, and you just want to do more good in the world. It's why I'm doing this right now when I don't need to work anymore.
Yeah.
It's why I'm killing myself with stress and getting my ass kicked by Tommy today.
I got to say, any deadlift variation is like one of my favorite things. So it's all right.
With them arms.
I'll take that. I'll take that one today. I know you're going to get a few back for sure. But you mentioned you are a human, and I want to talk about Eric Roza, the human being, a little bit. And this is going to be a little two-parter because we also got a great question from some of our supporters on Patreon that submitted some questions for this. And reflecting kind of on your journey so far, what are some of the moments and experiences in your life that have really crafted and defined you as a person and as the person to lead CrossFit? And then I'll have a quick follow-up after that.
Well, one of the things, I think what got me, I don't know about if anyone's ever comfortable with change and challenge, but we had a slogan at one of our value statements at my last company was, "We are energized by change and challenge." And what I always said to everybody, just keep telling yourself that. It's like, you will it to be true.
Yeah.
But growing up, I was the son of parents of two different nationalities, and my dad was French, and because of that, we went back and forth to France my whole childhood. So I had, if you can picture going to not just a different school, but everything in a different language and different culture when you hadn't spoken that language for 2 years, which was what happened my whole childhood. We didn't speak French at home. So it'd be like, okay, I was there for a year in first grade, and then I popped back in third grade for 5 months, and then popped back in fifth grade, and then eighth grade, and then 10th grade. And by 10th grade, it was brutal because, they were, you were taking I came in the second semester basically of physics in 10th grade in French. Well, you don't take physics in 10th grade in the States. And it was the second half. And my French was getting more and further behind that of my classmates. When you're young, it's really easy.
Yeah.
But I'm fluent-ish in French, but conversant, not in an academic or a business sense. So that was pretty formative, and it wasn't. I can't say it was super fun all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of got me much more comfortable. I guess both seeing people's common humanity, but also dealing with change, and you can imagine the social construct on the playground, and even it was just like a foreign world every time I went. So that was very formative for me. I grew up in a small town. My dad was a college professor, and my mom was an academic as well. So my dad's a lit professor. So very, kind of a intellectual situation, a lot of reading, a ton of reading, a lot of travel, a lot of just thinking about the world and ideas and talking things out. We did a lot of that. Very close group of friends my whole life growing up. And then I'll skip a lot of the other stuff, and I'll just jump forward to recent times. So a few years ago, it was clear that our marriage was ending, to both of us, to both Melissa and me. And my mom my dad had Alzheimer's, and my parents had moved out here, and my mom was taking care of my dad, and she started CrossFitting at 75, which was amazing. Nice. And I think really helped her have some happiness in her last couple of years of her life. But she ended up getting this horrible autoimmune disease, and I don't have siblings, and so I had to take care of her and try to save her life, and then take care of her basically after both of us recognized she wasn't going to make it. And that was right around 2 years ago, just as my marriage was ending. And then as part of it, I got custody of my dad, who was 85 at the time, and his Alzheimer's really went off the rails when my mom got sick.
Yeah.
And so I kind of moved into my new house where we are now. I have 4 young kids, as a newly single guy after 20 years with the same person. My mom, who was the closest person in my life for my whole life, kind of died unexpectedly. I thought she was going to live to 90, and she was only 77, I think. And now I've got custody of my dad, who has Alzheimer's. Got these 4 kids coming back and forth half the time, trying to reinvent myself and think about what it is to be single. And I'm in the last. I'd sold my company, and I'd probably stayed more than long enough, and it was time to leave. So I'd say that's been the really formative thing for me too, is just like everything changing in my life. and going, how am I going to have meaning in this second half? And I'm not somebody who can coast. And so I spent about a year. I left my job ultimately. My dad passed away in April of this year. And I just thought about how am I going to have meaning in my life. And so one of the things I realized is I got to spend more of my time around, you guys have heard me talk about CrossFit as the world leading platform for health, happiness, and performance. I got to spend more time around health and happiness. Like I got to get more of this into my life. I was doing it on the side with CrossFit. I was bringing CrossFit into the workplace. I was coaching at industry events. I'd have like 60 people on the beach in the south of France at an industry conference with no microphone, no one having done CrossFit before, screaming out above the waves, move to the next station, lunch, right? But like I knew those were the things that energized me. So it was like the more time, and I wrote this little manifesto for myself that I never shared with anybody that was like, the more time I spend around doing health and happiness and working on that for others, the more healthy and happy I am myself. Direct correlation, I see it every time. So do more of it. No excuses. So as I was starting to do, sit on boards and invest more in companies, I started to pick more and more companies that were focused on health and happiness. And that was really important to me. And that's what led me to True Coach, where I became chairman and, got more and more immersed in all these people around CrossFit. I was already, we had started CrossFit Sanitas 6 years earlier, and then joined the board and invested in this great company called Sondermind, which is making mental health much more accessible.
Yeah.
And I just found so much meaning in these experiences. I just said, this needs to be almost everything I do. And about almost 10 years ago, I'd gotten this crazy idea into my head that if I could do anything in the world, one day I would buy CrossFit and lead it into the future. And then everyone talked me out of it and said, Greg's not going to sell. Like, it's his thing, and that's fair. And even people who knew him, who I asked to introduce me, like said, don't bother, kind of like he's not going to sell. And I said, maybe I could join his board. And they said, he's never going to have a board. I'm like, but I'm really good at data and analytics. They're like, don't even, it's not going to be his thing, which is fine. And then this miracle happened, which was not a good thing, right? Which was the whole community really got turned upside down in the middle of the BLM movement and the middle of COVID. But good things can happen, at least I hope it's a good thing, in the face of other things happening that are really challenging. There's always an opportunity there. Mm-hmm. What was the thing you said at the beginning of this about, Sean, about the something a problem is...
Oh, it's not a problem. It's a solution waiting to happen.
Yeah, it's not a problem, solution waiting to happen. So, Sean, you just taught me that one, and that's a great one, right? So the solution waiting to happen maybe was a different approach to leading CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
The first approach built like one of the most amazing things in the world that changed all our lives. Maybe the second approach can build on that as well, you know?
Yeah. And so the quick follow-up, this is from Jonathan Davison, who sent this in for us. He says, I'd love to know who inspires Eric, not only in CrossFit, but also in business and personally. I'd also love to know who helped shape his internal and external magic philosophy.
So I think people that really inspire me are focused on, in the business world, are focused on customers, or I like to think it more broadly as stakeholders, mm-hmm. and building great product. So I always said, like, the thrill of delighting someone beyond their expectation, there is no amount of money that's worth that, right? It is the coolest thing ever. And it's been so awesome for me when I get notes from people, whether emails or I've gotten a bunch of cards, which is really cool that people still mail cards, just saying how much this new phase of CrossFit means to them. So I think if we can, if you can kind of delight people beyond their high expectations, that is amazing. And I personally kind of geek out on great products, and CrossFit is a product. It's being delivered in different ways around the world. And what you guys do, right, your podcast is a product. And I was really impressed and amazed to know you guys only started it in 2019. I mean, because it's really important to a lot of people, and it makes them happier. And so I think people who have focused on delighting customers and building, just amazingly great products are a big inspiration to me. I think very consciously about leadership, and I think very humbly, because I don't think innately I'm a particularly good leader, but I've worked really hard on it, and I know I'm getting better. I don't know if, like, the way I think about it is probably the same thing I'd say about myself as an athlete. Like, I don't know if I'm any good, and it probably depends on the background and who you're comparing it against. But I know that I'm getting better, right? So I know I'm going to work on it and get better. And so people who really focus on leadership inspire me. You can do so much good, and I've learned so much about. Once I took a conscious approach to trying to be a better leader, which probably happened, and got help from the outside, from leadership coaches and so on, starting about 12 years ago, that was really fulfilling to me. So I've learned a lot from those relationships too.
As Tommy said, we have some questions from some of our patrons. This one comes from Stephen Wexler. So this is going to go back now to the Open, but he wants to know, will CrossFit be taking back control, and you put that in quotes, of the Open broadcasting announcements while still getting affiliates around the world involved?
Boy, I think the answer is yes. Dave and I haven't talked about that specifically, and Dave ultimately will make the calls on that stuff. That's his area, and again, getting into leadership philosophy, I'll make ultimate calls on company direction, but I really believe that your job as a leader is to empower people and challenge them and help them, and so we'll ideate around it, but Dave will ultimately make that call. Hey, Tommy, I want to come back. Sorry, I didn't. The final part of your question was what shaped my philosophy around inner and external magic, inside and outside magic. I think it was going through some tough stuff. I mentioned recently, like, some of the really tough stuff, and I was like, magic is the only word for this for me. And like, one is the resilience that you have inside that you don't know you have. And if I look back and go, holy crap, how did I get it into my head that this was the time that I could pull this off to buy CrossFit? And where did I have the confidence that that we could turn the ship around when a lot of my friends said, don't do this, it's too late, it's going down, you don't want to be part of this. And then get it all done and bring the right people in and be able to engage with the community and like have the time to do that and still be a good dad and all these other things. And like, there was some magic inside me that made that happen. And then there was magic that happened outside me. So the way I'd say it wasn't so much listening to someone else or talking to someone else. It was just trying to be a good observer of what was happening and going, holy crap. Like, I'm not a metaphysical guy, so I don't tend to think about the world in ways that I can't measure and explain. But when faced with enough evidence, you go, God, you got to believe in this stuff.
Yeah.
There's I'm going to give you a great song quote from Bruce Springsteen, Thunder Road. He says, have a little faith, there's magic in the night. You remember that?
Totally.
I always thought, I'm a musician. I think you guys know, guitars in the background here and all that. And it's been, one of the, along with kind of working out and stuff, been one of the two big constants in my life. And so I'm one of those people who knows the lyrics to probably like 5,000 songs verbatim. And from the time I was 4 years old, they just stick. They don't go. I didn't have to work on that one. And I always love that song lyric. So that's the one that comes to mind. So maybe I learned that from Bruce Springsteen. Have a little faith, there's magic in the night. It's really cool.
I love it. And that resonates for us totally. We've talked about this a ton on the podcast, and I'll be honest here, like, getting laid off from CrossFit in 2018 was a huge shock to us. It was a job that we thought we would do forever. And it was something that caught us in such a way that I think kind of rattled, like some of these moments almost kind of like rattled your faith in yourself a little bit. And one of the ways that we were able to kind of bounce back and cope was through this podcast. And this podcast was a little piece of that combination of internal and external magic, where we used some of the things that we had built from the last couple of years in trying to pour ourselves into something that was meaningful again, while also putting that out to the world and the people that we had engaged with over and over again. And, they embraced us and gave some of that magic back. So I'm glad you answered that, because it's definitely something that resonates with us pretty clearly.
Yeah, that's really touching. Yeah, there's something you guys know about gratitude practices, right? And it's really, really important. And I would say the same thing with this notion of magic. You have to look for it. right? Like if you look for it consciously, it's there more and more, right? It's like being grateful. There's more and more things. The more you look for things to be grateful for, and I'm really trying to introduce this to my kids. It's like one of the most important things I can impart, those entitled little bastards, right? So it's like you got, and it's like, so there's something, right, evolutionarily, there's something called threat scanning that we do, right? So we look around and we're looking for what could kill us, right? And that's literally built into our DNA. And so because that comes for free automatically, what doesn't come for free is looking for things to be grateful about or looking for magic. And so you actually have to train yourself to overcome this thing called threat scanning. So another way to look at it is you literally have like a pessimism bias, right? You have a bias towards being, more aggressive and more freaked out and more anxious and everything. And so you've got to, the more you cultivate this practice of gratitude, and then for me, increasingly, this notion of like, notice and acknowledge the magic when it's there. It's fucking crazy. You didn't know this was coming.
Yeah.
You couldn't known it was coming. You didn't know you had it in you, or some nice person does something amazing, or just, I'll tell you, this morning, someone hit me up on LinkedIn messaging, which is not a good way to reach me because I seldom look at it. But he's the CEO of this really cool nonprofit and now a for-profit that invests in the developing world, Jesse Sullivan. And I'm not in touch with him regularly, and he's not an active CrossFitter, I don't think, but he's kind of into it. And he just sent me, for no reason, out of the blue, this really nice note, said, "It's so cool what you're doing with CrossFit right now." That was right before you guys came today.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's an example. It's a little thing, but like for me, that was a little external magic that just made me feel good. And like, wow, he noticed, and he's not even drinking the Kool-Aid and listening to this podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
It's amazing with just a thank you and just like a nice
and especially when it comes from someone you don't even really know,
Yeah.
We'll get into more of our patron questions as we sort of wind this down. This is from Patch Christie. Thoughts on switching the CrossFit standard from pounds to kilograms to be more accessible worldwide?
Yeah, man, I really want to be able to label everything in both.
Yeah.
And obviously the challenge is you've got a 2x2 because with the men's and the women's weights, you've then got to have 4 numbers. But that, like, in an ideal world, that's what we'll do. The challenge, and I can say this as an American, like the challenge is that Americans are so US centric, and that like in CrossFit, like it's probably, and I say this having being a citizen, a dual citizen, and having grown up in 2 different countries. It's in the world of CrossFit, people probably understand pounds better outside the US than we understand kilograms in the US. But more than half of the people now doing the Open, I think in this coming year, I think it'll be more than half, will be outside the US. And so I think little things like that make a difference. And maybe we just have to deal with 4 numbers. I don't know what the hell. And I'm not big on being politically correct either. In fact, I abhor it, right? I think it can lead to lowest common denominator, and everyone's afraid to say. I'd rather make some mistakes and just say, "Oh shoot, I screwed up. Let me try to get better," and not always be watching every word. So, I'm not making any promises here, but I see the appeal in moving to kilograms for sure.
And this next one's from Joe Ogier. It's his question is for those of us who really aren't directly financially in line with CrossFit. In his case, he's a garage gym CrossFitter who follows programming. He's historically had his L1, but haven't used it since coming home from a military affiliate overseas. And he just wants to know your overall thoughts, how those people that are garage gym CrossFitters are maybe not directly involved in the ecosystem are thought of or will be represented, and what is their value to the institution of CrossFit, and how can they add value?
So I think there's a lot of questions in there. So I think, they are valued, right? So we are not purely in an economic exchange situation. As I said, if someone is de-affiliated because it didn't make sense for them anymore, either economically or because of us not adding enough value to them, or they didn't like the way the brand was coming across, we want them to come back when they're ready, but they may choose not to. I think people working out in garages for any number of reasons have been a core part of CrossFit's growth, and I want 10x the number of people working out in garages as well. How's that? So I'll start with that. Right?
Totally.
That stated goal, right? Yep. So I think spreading the goodness of CrossFit, participating in things that make sense, whether it's whether it's do online competitions, in-person events, coming to the games when we can have people there again, introducing it to friends both at your place and helping them go to gyms. You're gonna see very soon from us one big example, and I'm not ready to announce it today, but you're already seeing it with online level 1. We've got step 2 coming, which I'm really excited about, which is again another online offering direct to consumers from CrossFit. That's cool. Which is super cool, and it's something only CrossFit could do. So that's sweet. My teaser.
Cool. All right,
I love it.
This isn't buy a $2,000 exercise bike and we'll call it CrossFit instead of Peloton. Right? Something different than that is uniquely CrossFit to really help bring new people into the ecosystem. But we're going to be launching, and again, we'll be looking for advice on this, more and more of the best education curriculum in the world for people who, I would say, not just do CrossFit, but want to live the CrossFit lifestyle of exercise and nutrition and being good to each other and all the rest of it. Yeah. And so that's going to be a massive focus for us. In fact, Nicole Carroll's whole group is now we call it education more than training. So we really want to think of ourselves. You guys know a bit of what's been done, kind of behind the scenes, but you guys know because you were inside CrossFit with some of the CrossFit health initiatives. I mean, I'll tell you, without us really doing almost anything, there are over 100 doctors, MDs in Brazil who are CrossFitters and who have this really avid Facebook community, and I'm going to meet with some of them when I'm down there next month. But everywhere in the world, we have all these amazing experts and things who really believe in CrossFit, and we're going to harness that power to provide more and more education to people for things outside of, it's not just about movement, it's about how you live. And so I think whether you're in a garage gym or whether you're not even doing CrossFit in the same way that we do it, we're going to kind of welcome everybody into that. Yep. But we want you, we're invested in your success. We're going to try to add more value to you, and we want you to help spread the word.
Yep.
Our last patron question comes from Al. Wants to know if you could walk us through a day in the life of you. Are you an early bird, coffee and toast kind of guy? What's your muesli or full fried breakfast to start your day? But what's your typical day look like?
So I am. I almost never eat before lunch now, and I used to do that. I'd say I've been intermittent fasting for probably almost 3 years now. Probably mostly over the last year. I'm not. If you guys had wanted to have breakfast this morning after a lot, I would totally do that. I don't go crazy about it. But generally, I'd say 5 to 6 days a week would be typical for me. Don't eat until lunch. What's new for me on that front is nothing, no calories after my workout. I don't care how hard it was in the morning. I never needed to work out to eat before a workout. Here's what I found. I found that I'm not somebody who notices a big difference with a ton of supplements, so I just don't take a lot. I mean, it makes a difference for some people. I take some, but I don't really notice it. And so I just tried an experiment and said, hey, if I don't do this protein and get my coconut water and blah, 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 right after a workout, am I going to be sore? Am I, less hypertrophy? Not that I got much hypertrophy anyway, but, and the answer was it didn't make much of a difference. And the reason it's really important to me, I think, first of all, I won't get go broad on here, but I can wonk out on this. I think it's really important for a lot of people to do this. But for me in particular, if you have a predisposition to Alzheimer's, which I have both based on my dad, but also on having an ApoE4 gene, I have a single allele. So I have about 3 times the general population risk of Alzheimer's. I don't like that. Yeah. That's getting close to 30% chance, right? Yeah. And so one of the most important things you can do if you have an Alzheimer's predisposition is to have big gaps between your feeding. And so I try to, I'll try to take it 24 hours off at least once a month. I haven't done this recently, but I got to find a time to do. I've done probably 4 times. I've done a 3-day fast too. Yeah, yeah. So I think this is really important when you're in my situation. I urge people to kind of read about it. And there's a great book by a guy named Dale Bredesen called The End of Alzheimer's, which is the best book on Alzheimer's. But it's definitely worth reading and learning about it because, again, if you're in my bucket where you have 1 or 2 ApoE4 genes, it's not a pretty picture. And I got to take my dad through Alzheimer's by myself. It's awful, right? Yeah. So that's a big one. I wake up usually around 6:30. I have the kids on on Tuesday, Wednesday, and every other Monday morning. So I'm trying to like find a moment of Zen in the morning. I got my little Tibetan singing bowl here.
Yeah.
Get myself a couple ohms and write in a journal, meditate sometimes. I'm not very good about that. I love to write in my journal. I'm not that great about meditating, but I try to do it. And then hopefully get a little peace. And then I get the monsters up, and I got 3 kids coming up going crazy and screaming at them. I lose all of my Zen, trying to get them out to the school bus, which happened this morning, of course. And then I go work out. Usually, that's the typical plan. Get into the office. Try to, I get home in time for dinner. What's nice about being single is that there's just no excuse. Like I am home for dinner, unless in the rare cases when I've got a work dinner or something. Like I've got a couple next week. It's not like before it was easy to miss and say, I'll try to be home and then I'm late. No, I am home for dinner. It's like precious time with the kids and they need me. Yeah. And so on a typical weekday when the kids are here, I'm with them until 9 or 9:30. I've been in a mode of getting some work done after that, which I hate. I hate being on a screen at night. I hate doing work at night. So I'd much rather be playing the guitar or reading a book or something at that point.
Yep.
So that's and the day is a mess, is a blur of back-to-back meetings right now and trying to stay up with email and not enough kind of thinking and creative time. And I definitely like that. So that there's a lot of things I need to improve in my daily schedule. I do try to walk during the day. And this is another thing I urge people to do. I realized 3 years ago that I would go, and I never wore a Fitbit or anything, but I just, there's the health app on the iPhone. So if you carry it, it gives you a rough sense of your steps. And I realized that I was like fit, doing CrossFit in the morning and literally during the week doing nothing else, not walking at all. And so I'm like, this is ridiculous. You got to fix this. So about 3 years ago, I said, you got to get out and walk for at least an hour during the day, take calls, make people do walking meetings. So I try to do that most days. I don't know that I'm successful most days, but I try to do it. And when possible in bare feet. I'm a huge bare feet guy.
Okay.
So I will go out on bare feet. Our temporary office in Boulder is right near a creek. So I don't really care how I look. Boulder, everyone's a freak anyway. But even if it's sunny here, even if it's 40 degrees, I'm going out in bare feet and walking around for an hour. I probably will also get into the creek and at least get in up to my up to my calves or something.
Okay.
I love cold water stuff and all that stuff.
Well, we know you got a meeting with one Dave Castro here coming up, but I got one final question. You're a musician. You love to play the guitar. You perform a lot. But if you have one go-to song that's going to fire the people up, like you cannot miss, what are you breaking out?
Oh, okay. So you mean if I'm performing?
If you're performing.
So I've been writing songs for a long time. I started writing songs when I was 15. Okay. And so I play probably half and half covers and originals. There's one song that won't say much because you haven't heard it, but there's one song that I wrote that's just ends up always being a crowd pleaser. Right. And it's kind of it's a slow blues groove, but it really gets people going, and it's a sing-along chorus. And it's a song about infidelity. It's the lighter side of infidelity, which, by the way, was not a thing in my marriage ending, just to be clear. It had nothing to do with that, but it was a funny song. When I write a song, I go into a persona, so it's not about me usually. And it's called Faithful, Loyal, Honest. And the chorus says, I was faithful, I was loyal, I was honest, at least most of the time. I may have laid down with girls all over town, but you never left my mind. So it's just some asshole singing this song. But it's a funny song, and it tends to be a big crowd pleaser.
That's a very rock and roll line, though. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, listen, we really appreciate you doing this, and thanks for having us out. And I know I speak for a lot of people, and Tommy included. We are really excited about where this is going, and I think having you in charge is probably best case scenario right now. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean. It's a real privilege to have this opportunity. I can't believe it's happened, and I don't want to waste it. I want to make sure I live up to the high expectations and the incredible potential of CrossFit to change the world in an even bigger way. And it's so cool. It's like surreal to me that you guys are flying in and have all your crazy cameras and all that, and want to talk to me about this. I love what you guys do, and it's really cool. Let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it.